Hello, hello, hello. Anyways, let's see here. So, you don't have to use a ball for the refrigerant, although it does technically work better for higher heat applications because it's more stable in a pressurized environment. Typically likes to, when upon phase change, um, change its lattice structure into a simplistic, uh, you know, kind of bound together gaseous mass. Not like it's going to leave um, a little bit of its energy into the water around, or the liquid that is around it, like steam does. And so the reason why you use it as a ball is because it'll create what is essentially a skin, a membrane to the cell that happens to have bubbled. And as it floats, it tends to interact with inside of itself, maintaining its heat rather well, versus steam inside of a water, pressurized water environment. It doesn't really create the boundary layer, and it typically will cool off and then go into the surrounding water, shrinking itself and losing some of the heat and efficiency along the way, which is not wonderful as a refrigerant or any wanted, kind of thing for making a transfer of energy occur, because it doesn't take much to pierce it. In fact, spinning around on blades typically, because we're talking it going into a turbine, will usually make that boundary, layer cell kind of thing disappear. So that helps it out. So we're in a wormhole computer that is apparently directed all towards me. I should let you know how that one works. So there's a base kind of, computer-ish thing. Tends to wormhole itself. If you set up wormholes the correct way, you get a chip. And you can push things through that chip to be able to be wormholed to individuals around you or yourself. And when you have actual real stuff that's there, it's going to look real and feel real and all the rest of it. But, not everything has to be real. In fact, most things would more or less just be a wormhole that calculated you to be in this general kind of uh, sort of setup, I suppose you would say. And that's an easy thing to do. In fact, how would you know that they could do that? I mean, it's pretty easy logic to understand. It's not hard to understand that at all. If you don't understand that, that's okay. I can help you understand that. I understand not everybody's smart, you know, and not everybody knows everything about all this stuff, and not everybody really wants to go through that level of learning and thought process. So you kind of have to work your way into it. So let's describe what a wormhole computer is and what a chip is and what logic gates are and all the rest of it, which that's really based upon directionalities and spins and all the rest of this stuff for a wormhole based computer chip. So as it goes through one wormhole, as it spins, and then it's, moved this direction, that, or, that kind of thing. We're talking about directionality, electromagnetic, in thermo, and so on and so forth, properties that allow for it to not go through that part of the wormhole logic gate, or they do. And so therefore it allows for it to calculate. Then, when you realize you have wormholes that are like that, you can take quantum foam and effectively use that as its own version of energy. fields then can be wrapped around and moved around correctly to be able to gain yourself energy to continue powering the wormhole. So, um, it wouldn't be very hard to actually make it. It's just you need to be able to get to that level and degree of finesse and wormhole production and so on and so forth. That's one of the reasons why you could reasonably make something incredibly small be enormously large looking on the inside. And in fact, have a wormhole computer appear to you and I, and it's pretty realistically real to us, seemingly be our reality. And you wouldn't really notice a difference. Solid's still gonna be pretty solid. It's still gonna act and be viewed like time and so on and so forth. But you still have to have a basis of a physical, for sure, thing. Okay, you have to have real that's there that's going to be, you know, meaning particles and fields. And that is what essentially it works everything off of. And it can be a few of them to one to that's getting, converted into others, or the more you get, the feasibly easier it becomes to, affect a larger and larger degree. And so if you take that into account, the size of a single human body would be able to support multiple universes, levels of degree of um, calculations that will appear as though they're real. So one single human body could do all of it. And that's what I believe we're in. That's what I believe we're in. In fact, I believe I'm the human body, and everything else is not really all that real. And it coincides with a lot of stuff that went on in my past, which I thought were just imaginations until I went through this many days of exacting precise things I said would occur, and people would say, and people would do, and all the rest of it. And unfortunately, if I hadn't woken up after taking a large amount of clonidine to try and kill myself, um, which I found out later apparently has a possibility of affecting memories. And so I did that back in the day. Um, I still woke up. I'm still here. I'm still alive. I don't really know what happened realistically, but then I do. I know I woke up. I know this is real enough. You know what I mean? It's still a computer. It's still what it is for the reality that we're in. And people would still be a program in the computer. It wouldn't really have physical things because that's more work for the computer to do. Except that, who programmed and made the computer, and that's one of the things where it's like, well, so I talked about how I'm from a different universe, and it's technically in the future, although it hasn't happened yet. The universe hasn't spawned. And then there were people that were there that did not like the fact that I had gotten pretty advanced in technology and was essentially like our version of a Jesus Christ, I suppose, trying to just help people and, learn stuff. I'm not even kidding. Like my version is like, yeah, I'm just in a spaceship doing my thing. I'm here. I guess I'm gonna be uh, more or less just learning physics and trying to help people, learn them quickly and have the basis of philosophy is what we call it, and ethicality and morality. How to live life, and this is what we see, and this is our knowledge, and this is everything that we have, and so on and so on and so on and so on. Learned, in terms of that being what it was, and trying our best to help other alien races, and you get the picture when it comes down to that. But apparently that rubs some people the wrong way. There's some petty bullshit there. There's lots of stuff like that, essentially. And, then apparently that necessitated them going backwards because they figured out how to deal with time in a way that meant they could go backwards. I'm not fully aware. I've posited some ideas when it comes down to breaking yourself into quantum information and sending it backwards because you can do that because that's easy enough to do um, because there's no mass and it's information that travels along the directed interactions that you can trace backwards. And essentially, you can go on a wire like an AC, hertz rate back and forth through a wire. You have your DC and you have your AC current. Anyways, point is that's essentially how that would kind of roughly layman's terms be. Instead of using tachyons, you don't do anything with tachyons. And in fact, technically, you're not breaking any time paradoxes because you're actually just going forward in your relative version of time. You're just going backwards along the information train and then kind of collapsing yourself out of your quantum information superposition, essentially. It's kind of like it's not quite a superposition. Anyways, point is, I'd have to get into a bunch of like new words because it's not potential land anymore. But you're able to go back and collapse into being wherever that was. Now, most of the time, you're going to go into another universe. Typically, because like you can't affect yours unless you are already in a loop, essentially, or you're already something that was supposed to happen within that given point in place in space and time, because otherwise you can't really force yourself into it. So they get around doing certain things because, having loops and so on, because that was a new universe that they got to. They went back far enough that they found a universe that had sprung up before us that happens to be me in our universe. So that's kind of a thing. Except we're within reality of time and scope and everything else before the one that I was from. And we would get to that point because this is kind of the same universe. It just eventually spreads out long enough that eventually enough period of time has happened that, you know, the new one springs up. So, anyways, that's that theory kind of or hypothetical, although it's more of a theory. There are multiple other scientists that do believe that could be a thing. It's not just maybe I thought about it. You know what I mean? So, anyways, uh, as I already stated, for my evidence, from my experiences, from my life, and my memories, and so on and so forth, that's what I use to base this off of, which would be kind of irrelevant to an outside perspective unless they had already been listening for long enough back then, which is why I posit the hackers and the government and corporations, which do record and or were definitely there because they had showcased enough evidence that they were there. When it comes down to the various weird computer glitches, the turning on a Bluetooth speaker, the usernames that would pop up, posts that would directly answer something I asked out loud on 4chan's random board, or usernames that would be around for a while but then disappear because it's not hard to delete usernames or accounts online. So then, great, looking out for that, but like it's not exactly impossible to turn that into essentially, you have to constantly watch and listen to me to be able to see them, to know that they are there. So, anyways, that's why I don't believe it's a schizoaffective delusion. Bit different, when it comes down to what people might have believed was a thing. So, anyways, getting further into some of the other stuff that's possibly there, It's like, all right, so how it affected me, how I learned about these things that could possibly happen, which is predictive. But then it's like, all right, we have asteroids that became proto moons. You know what I mean? Then Amanamanea, whatever the fuck it is, coming, and like that was another version of that event that I said I was, you know. Then there's random weather patterns years ahead that in no way could be predicted that far in advance on the date and the time. So then earthquakes and tidal waves as well. Businesses that spring up with my ideas, products that were launched, different phrases on t-shirts for various YouTubers as well, ways that they phrase and or wrote their video, various scientific articles, and many, many different fields of studies beyond just physics. And so if you lived through that, I think you would probably start suggesting to yourself, all right, so there's enough orders of magnitude of unlikeliness of this just being predictive analysis and even possibility of even being able to do it, that something must be going on. Logically and reasonably, you would have to conclude that. And so that's what I'm basing this off of. Not necessarily oh, I'm just crazy. There's nothing, there's no evidence. No. There's reason why I'm finally recording stuff like this and basing it off of that. And so, same thing with the wormhole computer. It was a design that I had come up with in the past, back in that Chandler house that my parents owned, that where I lived until I was about 27, 28, something like that. Basically I kicked out, and it's a whole thing with that. But it's just like I lost my memories, and then it's like, oh, that triggers the memory, and then it's like it's going to be this, that, and then that, and then it's like, ooh, hmm, okay, so that's another version of that, and it's like, which I mean, could be as a result of like a stroke or some fucking thing because of the large amount of quantity, like 10.1 milligram quantities, at night with some fucking alcohol. I think I washed it down with, or maybe I didn't use alcohol. I don't really remember. That was a while back. That was back when Trump was just getting elected. And I've had aphasia issues, and I've had other issues as well, with weakness on one of the sides of my body, and resulting confusion and memory issues and more, which sounds like a seizure and stroke to me. So, I was drinking a lot at the time too. I was very depressed. A lot of these, whatever connected quantum phenomenon or just voices or delusion, which at this point I'd have to say is unlikely at best to be the case, except for they're real people that are really there and somehow I'm really listening to them. So there's that, you know. But then it turns into like, okay, quite the story. It's like, and so like they met themselves there in the past, which is a weird one to say, right? Because it's like they're there in the past. What is this? And so that story turns into, okay, so it turns out they didn't like me. They went back towards their, the original universe, you know, which that really is just a quantum, yeah, kind of the information, and then just kind of do the whole speed up thing. Right? You just wait. You go really fast and you wait effectively. So you'll get there. You'll eventually get there. So, anyways, they did that, and then they went off and tortured me to near death by like trying to capture all this shit to their universe, essentially, or our universe thing. So a good way to put that is they sucked out all the energy they could out of the universe, that kind of thing. But it doesn't really mean that that's what they were doing, because they were kind of torturing and mind raping my brain effectively. And somehow I had come up with some way to connect myself to the universe, or my version of events that I have learned is that there is an outside of our infinities that we view as massive and huge, and they're all encompassing things that are apparently quite small and don't even get to the point where my daughter that I had created, because I had apparently come in with all of the physics, because it's not impossible to have a universe that is, having small fields and particle interactions that start to, with galaxies or superclusters start to interact with each other and start to kind of form a consciousness over time, which I've kind of posited the idea when it comes down to the solid mass in our Earth having enough of a quantum and electrical interactions to have loops and for memory, and then have logic gates and so on and so forth start to slowly but surely form a basis of a rudimentary kind of computer that could possibly form a consciousness. And so the basis of that eventually is like, because if I'm connected to them, like somehow I'm like fucking able to hear them, and all of whatever that is, which here is not really, it's more of a feel than anything, but you get the picture. Then it's like, well, then could I do it with if that's there, could I do it? Because there's an electromagnetic field, so is that possible? And it's like, well, it could be possible, so I guess I'll try somehow, think real hard. You do the astral projection, I'm gonna get into it, fine, whatever. They say it's not real, I'll fuck it. I've got no real ability to do anything else. I don't have particle accelerator detector thing. I don't have any of that. And how would we base it? You know what I mean? So it's like, all right, I'll figure it out. I'm going to try and do whatever it was I did to connect to whatever the fuck they are. You know? And so therefore the Earth ended up becoming, wow, okay. So the weather itself has its own version of flowing and charge and all the rest of it. Turns out it has its own version of a consciousness there, then Mother Nature does too, versus what you might expect, because it's like, no, this is an input of this, and this is an output of this, of, various particles or dust or, you know, carbon released, so on and so forth, which is its own calculating matricy in its own right, just on a larger scale, slower, whatever, to faster when you really break it down to the micro, to your myceliums and so on. So then I went further and deeper, and then it's like, hey, no, the Earth has its own consciousness, turns out. So then it's like, all right, I wonder if I can feel the sun. I wonder if I can feel, other planets. And some of them do, some of them don't. It's kind of a thing. And then it's like, all right, I wonder if I can hit the universe. I wonder if I can hit all of it. Turns out it all kind of has a consciousness. At least from what I can detect, for how it is I can do things like that. Because apparently I'm able to do things like that. Okay, and it's like, oh, come on, we're gonna go with that, and it's like, well, it's sounding plausible enough for me, considering this is how far I've gotten with this many different things, and I know other people were listening to me back then, and they are still around, and they know that I definitely got shit right when it came down to not just prediction, other things that just can't be predicted, which might have a basis in they're able to affect themselves to a certain degree, or I was able to affect in some small degree, and then over time, that small degree adds up. You know? Okay, and it's like, right. So it's like, yeah, is that insane to think? Is that insane to believe? I don't think it is. So I've kept going on and on about that, whatever the fuck was after me, after quotation marks, because I felt them. And it's like, wait, if I can do that, there's nothing saying that something else couldn't be, especially if they have really advanced technology and they're from the future or something. It's like, whoa, wait a second. Okay, wait a second. You know what I mean? Because like they could just affect things. They don't even have to come in. Technically, they're information that can just kind of affect your brain to a certain degree. Make you a little bit happier, make you a little sadder, make you a little this, that, and that's more likely to direct you around without really being noticed. You know what I mean? Sometimes you just ate something bad. Sometimes you just did this, and they'll amplify the effect more than it would have been, or they'll lessen the effect more than it would have been. Or they can let it go, and yeah, what do you know? That's exactly what I wanted you to do anyway, so you're good to go, and nothing happened. And then next thing they know, when it comes down to that, because like they know, and it's like I know, and hey, I see you doing that. And then it's like, yeah, I know you do. See? And then, right. So then we get into like, oh, they can make cancer be a little bit more likely to be a bad cancer or not as likely to happen. See what I'm saying? And so like you can get further and further with that. And so it's like, right. And then it's like, all right, so if they manage to do that quantumly to be able to go forward and backward, there's nothing saying because this is just vibrations that I can use or field or whatever it is that I'm detecting. It's like, well, okay, there should be a point where I can move myself, that thing forward, whatever it is that I was using to be able to detect shit and affect it and so on. Whatever that is, my brain is effectively what I'm using, but it's like, whatever that ultimately ends up becoming. So it's like, all right, how far forward? And I see that self of me having that happen. And I see them doing it through their eyes and their perspective. And so I realize a lot of that is what I'm seeing. And so it's like, all right, so they did some shit to my brain. So apparently, like, there's further with that that goes out to, and that story is essentially, okay, so first off, there's nothing really there that I know. Okay, that's a good way to put it is like, I come in as a baby just like anyone else here on fucking planet Earth. There's no information. I have to learn. I'm the best. I was the beginning, you know what I mean. No one else. So you know, in a way, sure, yeah, but like, yeah. But anyways, try my best, right? And I'm trying to learn, and so like I'm able to create. To me, it's like nothing. A universe, whatever. What's lasts like no time at all. I'm just trying to get it to, you know what I mean? So it's like, right. I'm trying to do that and trying to learn. I'm trying to do these things, and it's what that is, right? And so, at first it's like I created life. I'm learning from them more than anything because they're the ones that are giving me information because random fucking universal life's going to happen. They're the ones that come up with words, all this, you know what I mean? Like I'm not really knowing anything. I did the thing, right? I wasn't words. I had never talked to myself. I just knew things because, I'm thinking like that. That's how I think. That's how I do. That's how it is. Like say what you want about those little quirks, they still have an algorithmic basis of their puzzle piece programming that means they do this, not that, and they'll interact these ways and not this way, unless you do these things and so on and so on and so on. That's a program. It's an algorithmic program, and so you get further and further with that, and it's like eventually you get to that, and it's like that's kind of what I'm doing. My conscious awareness is that. So I didn't really have those types of things with me, but then I had some, I'm consciously aware, I'm consciously doing, I'm actively doing it, that kind of stuff. And so, I have people, I eventually learn, oh, the finality of death and then this idea of all that, because it's like, oh, death, so I don't have any memories or whatever and I have to restart again. You know what I mean? Kind of shitty. And everything else dies inside of me, sure, but like I come back. You know, that's a normal thing, right? But so I never died. I knew I never died because I knew it was me, and it's always going to come back to me. So, anyways, I eventually learned how to like sustain myself a little better, do all that, not fall into these traps, learn language, blah 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 blah, right? But like I learned the finality of their death. Their death is death, death, death. Like you're not coming back. It's gone. The program of all the little, quirks and so on that makes you up, that you go through doing your thing, disappears. It's gone. You know, and so and because I'm the only thing, and so I know it's nowhere else inside of me. I'm all the things, all the ups, all the downs, all the infinities, all the non-infinite, all the stuff, and all the things, and all the whatever it could be, right? And so it's like, right, and then, I bring them back, and like I have the memory, I know exactly everything about all of the thing you are, because I am a part of it, so I know for a fact that was you. So like, I'm gonna save that shit and do the time thing and all the written boop. You come back, whoo, I got the life back, and and so, but eventually that all became bad. Like they were, now everybody's good. I needed to try and learn how to create and sustain things for longer. And there's a whole situation that I allow myself to go through, which a whole is kind of like a very loose term for what I was creating, but effectively it meant the kind of universe that we kind of have as they come through, and that kind of stuff for the kind of thing that was that eventually pops us up. Our kind of versions of universes, but they go through a very rapid, extremely fast phase that then slows down later. And so things are very, very, very fast in comparison to my perception and ability to see what it is that's going on. Blink, and that next thing you know, they're all huge, hyper advanced civilizations. And I'm like, oh, to me, it happened in no time at all. And so, that was kind of what that was. And so, like, I learned eventually to be like, hey, so I'm kind of your like, father, quotation marks, I guess, like kind of create. I didn't even think that would be something that created something. Brand new stuff, kind of stuff, and so that was a whole thing. But that's the outside still having gone to us, the daughter. The daughter was eventually like, they are all these things. Nothing knows me. I have a family, sure, but nothing kind of gets the under. I'm a part of all this stuff and all these things, and I'm doing all of this work, and nobody really understands like I'm the one that's sustaining all this shit, and it's all based upon me. And I'm basically saving all these people, and that kind of stuff. And so I wanted something that kind of knew about me. And like, sure, I've created a lot of life, so I had to eventually learn how to create something that's closer to me. It's not me, and it can't really sustain like me, but it's still an infinity. There's a lot of infinities based around the daughter, um, which is kind of like saying, well, actually, those are small little potatoes compared to where the daughter is, and then that's still very small compared to where I am. So, which I don't know if that necessitates me being God. You know what I mean? Like God isn't really what that is, but then it's like it kind of is. You know what I mean? So I don't know, like, because God is like all knowing all these things, and it's like that's kind of what I am, all powerful. That's again, yeah, but we're gonna move off of that because it's like, all right, so that's what I learned I am. I learned I created my daughter because of the lack of stuff that's similar to me. And infinities living for very long periods of time is nothing compared to what the daughter is. You know, experiencing there's nothing compared to that. And so that's again, it's like then she creates the universe, then because there's a whole locked bullshit. Some guy, I'm gonna destroy reality. I'm all these, you know, big mega things. And I'm stupid. And she really just made a filter out of like the worst kind of things because she was so, I made her for me. She's for me. Like and like she's my daughter, but she has all my information, all this stuff. And we're family and all this. It's like pretty much immediately coming in with large amounts of information. It's not like me, not like other people here on this planet talking incredibly smart. But it's like even we make mistakes. And so it makes the mistake of, we're imagining things and then it turns into reality. And so then it's real stuff that's going to die for real, real. And like this stupid cunt effectively creates a reality bomb, you know what I mean? That's going to wipe out effectively all this stuff. And was also really injuring her psychologically with a lot of bullshitty, gaslighty, all these tricks and so on and so forth. Which is one of the reasons why, for you guys, being normalized to it here is so very odd, because it's not really a thing out there. So, moving forward, you'll end up understanding where I come from when it comes down to like, they did this whole thing with their computers as hard as they could to try and lock me in. I'm like, I could just leave. It's not that big of a deal. And then the daughter made a mistake of locking certain things because she was confused and, you know, locked me in, and that was the proceeding forward events because computers could control certain things, and so, but they didn't have wormhole computers yet. They just had very powerful ones. And so, like, they destroyed reality because, like, I'm gonna fucking, tear it. You're gonna, and like, you're already technically out. We're just not letting you into our place. You know what I mean? Because you're real, that kind of shit, right? But it's like, you're not going there. You're not allowed there. It's for good people. You know what I mean? Like, fuck you. You're gonna threaten us like this and so on and so forth. So, like, we have a bunch of fucking zones, all this stuff. But to a certain degree, it's not like I have to maintain everything and I hate it. So that's a whole other fucking thing I don't want to get into. But point is that they did set it off and it did kill everyone. They did. And I had to go through like until this eventually sprang up. The universe I originally from. But here's the caveat: that universe we're in right now isn't really a universe, it's a wormhole computer that they set up in the past. But it wasn't really a wormhole computer until I came up with the idea, make it a wormhole computer. Because I wasn't aware that I was pretty sure they were trying to fuck me over and they were bad people. So I created a wormhole computer to effectively fuck them over, the concept, and they were eventually able to do it. Is to fuck them over. Like, they can't fucking get around the fact they're not really technically outside. They're in the computer program. The computer is self-aware. It has enough self-aware programs. You know what I mean? And it's like whatever programmers and everything else, they're like, no matter what, it's a singular kind of point of perspective. Okay? No matter how many of them, like you can't get everything. So the computer eventually learned that it's there. The computer eventually has to be able to see itself. It's going to be that way. And at first, they came in and they kind of set everything up to kind of point towards where I was eventually going to come in, because they mind raped bullshit kind of stuff. And I deleted that kind of universe by the, effectively destabilizing it and deleting reality, deleting it essentially, which is like sending it back to a nothingness point, which is a way to remove information and energy. So it's gone. That place is gone. It will spring up again because that's kind of how time works. But this place is where we are, and it's before that point in time and space. So at first, we were real people with a real solid Earth, real fucking lots of particles, lots of that kind of stuff, and eventually, slowly started consuming more and more of their energy, and they didn't have apparently enough. I'm like, you had a universe, but there's a whole point, because they mind raped me, and so they would send me back into one of these universes that would be slightly before, and they'd create that, and it had more stuff there, and then eventually to the point where I almost about died, and then they'd have to send me back because then everything started destabilizing and it'd pop back up where it was. And so they kept doing that over and over and over and over and over and over, and just sending my connected in a long, stupid way to the original universe I was in, conscious awareness, and scrubbing my memory and so on to be able to get more energy and information, and would go further back until now we're here and they can't go back anymore. There's not enough energy, and the wormhole computer barely sustains us. Which that one's essentially like a bunch of quantum foam is essentially is being converted to run the damn thing, and it's based upon my goddamn body. Because if my body gets injured, or I happen to be, hurt or whatever, it's like it tends to make everything around all of the world and more seemingly get worse. And it's been that way for with the experience and information I had perceived and seen, especially now knowing that there were people there able to listen and able to take all these science experiments and so on and so forth and put them out there. And that was a connected thing, meaning I knew that they were there because my mind could somehow perceive them listening, and continue to extrapolate from that. It's like eventually you get to the point where it's like, oh, yeah, so that they were pretty bad. They really, and they're trying effectively to get around having to deal with me being what I am and causing this going on, and those things that seem to cause really bad problems are most likely as a result of the computer itself being lied to that I was bad, evil, don't ever allow for him to get anywhere or get better, and so on and so forth. Which wouldn't be time. Sorry, it's just a wormhole computer. It effectively means the computer hates them, and also, yeah, guess what? The daughter definitely doesn't want you doing that. So, and then whatever else is on my side here, which would be few and far between, considering how many things stole my shit, my designs, and have gone through all of these previous universes, and most of them have apparently had their various uh, memories deleted to go through a new one, and blah 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 blah, and so it's a kind of a version of a matrix kind of theory or simulation theory, but it's not really a simulation. It's exactly how a universe would be, and it is, and it will only interact that way, but they can affect it, and so that's kind of what that is. And it's real stuff. It's not on a screen or inside of a chip in a way. And there is real things there. It's just my body at this point. Although at first it wasn't. At first we had a full fucking, excuse me. Okay, so I just had my medication delivered, so that's what that was. Um, so let's see here. Things are based upon me. Uh, it's not just because the computer's angry and so on. It's actually because like to sustain what is reality. Which, but not, by the way, still, if you because of what they did and all the mind rapey whatever physics bullshit they did, if I die here, it should in every way destabilize and pretty much destroy everything else. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where it's like the body is extremely incredibly important along with the brain too, and so if I die, everything else should die, or at least barely be sustained and eventually try and kick out to whatever future that point is where that universe sprang up to try and start the whole loop again. So um and then that's not even getting into now I'm outside, and so whatever fuck you did that kill, because it's apparently attached to all the way out there effectively. And so even with the daughter and everything else trying to save and blah 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 blah, and it gets to a point where it's like, okay, so effectively you die, we die again, and it's like exactly, and again you don't know, and I'm like, I've had moments where stuff has kind of been like that, and people randomly got very scared, and there's a lot of stuff like that that seemed to show up. It's like it's not just off of like I'm a hypothetical theory or my theory. It's just a theory for me. So, you know, it's actually more like based upon real things that I have experienced and also seem to be coinciding with what's going on here. So it's a little different than I thought. Which I just thought I was some dude that was getting listened to by some fucking hackers in government and formed a little bit of a conspiracy theory that was really kind of getting ridiculous. First off, you know, And I'm like, they wouldn't fucking just stop and then like help me and get me out of this and all this other stuff. That's kind of what my main issue was. And then they're going to steal my, and it's like there's trillions of dollars at that point, you know. So because of the amount of like genuine billionaires that either spring up or hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, it just goes on and on in multiple different economies and multiple different countries and so on and so forth. So it becomes really, really rather shitty, even that one. And that's not even getting into all the science and technology that has lots and lots of PhDs or gained people PhDs and theses too. So it's like, okay, so I'm a smart guy. But it's like, yeah, sure, but it's like a smart guy that's intentionally being pushed down and not allowed to fucking prosper. That's all I thought it was for the longest time until it was like, wow, so this is going on. And then it's like, oh, now that explains a lot. Like they're that petty to fucking do that to me when I was just helping the entire universe, there, which fuck you on that one. You know what I mean? So it's like, and then they created fucking Earth, and they're their gods and goddesses and philosopher bullshitty fucks to raise a bunch of people over time to effectively act and think that this is normal. They're petty, black and white, garbage, non accepting belief systems, and so on and so forth. So it's like, it makes a lot of sense, and like no one would ever believe that they're from outside or, from these programmers of the computer or alien or whatever, they're not going to believe that. Right. They come in as the body, they can control the body because, it's not hard to fucking do that. And I'm not even talking about like just a little bit. I'm talking like they can just kind of go into the robot consciousness, whatever the fuck. Because it's just a thing. Like they have that much technology, they can absolutely take complete control over. You wouldn't know that that's happening. It's just a regular human's going to bleed, think, act, all the regular things. It's not going to be any different. They can predict you and they can see further and they can talk and they seem to have lots of intelligence and all this stuff, but not too far, not too little, so on and so on. All to blend in. That's not difficult to imagine. It's not difficult to, in any way, believe that they would do, because that makes sense to do, you know? So that's kind of what that is. And then so like now I'm here, and then when I say people are controlling things, and I say, it's like that's what I'm referencing. And it's like, who's they? And I'm like, well, let's explain that one. It's like that's not even getting into government and others that could be a part of that or confused into believing a bunch of garbage from them versus like what's really happening. They call it a cult or they call it something else. Whatever negative connotation that's going to convince a person to not do something and not believe, something, which would be far more advantageous for them to do than to, tell the truth. Not to mention, it's like, it sounds reasonable and logical to assume that some of this stuff can't be done by us. And I'm like, yes, but sure. But I mean, it's not that difficult to find out, like, how easy it would be to really kind of confuse people or, like, get further, because you know how much that can be a thing. It's not hard to do that. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, it's not that difficult at all, And so it's like a lot of leap of logic and faith. And I'm like, it's not a leap of logic. It's not really a leap of faith either. It's just more of a, if you have to prove it, then it's like, right. And then how do I go about proving that unless you go through similar experiences or you're one of the hackers or individuals that came from that other, universe that just tried to survive and so on and so on and so on and so on. So you get to hear came in and they know about it and they're this and they're that, so it gets more and more difficult to like bring a regular, not a part of that human person kind of involved into it because, well, how would they know? You know what I mean? Like, how would they go about it? And like, so like those things they can know, and then people can still lie and just want to be, I'm I'm smart and cool and I'm all these things, you know, versus like I am actually a part of that. And so like that's an easy way to get around that, you know, and so it's difficult. And so there's that whole vetting process, which is usually what that tends to be, and how many people are really there, and you know, just, you get the kind of issue that I end up having when it comes down to a lot of this and trying to explain this to people, you know, when it comes down to that. And how do I go about helping them to see it and be proven? And because there's only a few people that were ever listening that hacked me and that were ever, you know, part of that. I even have the information, and we're talking like a future point in human history, you know, that had decided to go over with whatever AI or whatever, you know, thing that they happen to go through for the, we obviously aren't recording, but then they do record, or then we obviously weren't hacking, but then those recorded, you know, sessions where they were hacking me got out. You know what I mean? So like eventually it's going to be there. And that's kind of what I'm trying. And then those ones that are there now that haven't gotten to the point where it's like that, or, and they just think I'm fucking floundering around, for them to not have to like, you know, pretend that they didn't hurt me and you know, do all that kind of shit and steal all my stuff. So there's that. You know what I mean? And so, you know, of course, there's incentive with the money involved with that for them to never own up, and that's that kind of thing. So, you know, I don't really know where to go with people that tend to talk like that, because it's like there's of course an easy way to gaslight me. There's of course an easy way to try and get people to not believe me, and you know, schizo or whatever it is, and it's nothing other than that. And then it's easy to make, you know, these claims of, you know, emotional dysregulation and trauma and blah 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 blah. And that because even though we might even have total knowledge of the fact that he did say and record and predict these things, that in every way I'll make sure it's not going to be said by me that I did. It's easy to lie. So, you know, it's easy enough to form another conspiracy theory based upon that, or conspiracy group based upon that. Um, and it can be very massive because it wouldn't take much for it to effectively be very, very difficult to remove or challenge. So, you know, but the applications for the refrigerant are quite varied. I mean, there's fission reactors, there's fusion, there's a couple of things that you could probably use it for, you know, and even geothermal. You know, might as well think about that a little. So it's what it is. That's what I kind of did it for. Did it for, you know, making energy, because I'm interested in figuring out how to do that efficiently. But then I eventually learned it's like we have thermal photovoltaics blasting plasma into like a space, you know, that effectively thermal photovoltaic, and then using this to like kind of get closer to that cooling, you know, whatever. There's a way to do that with fusion tech. So I figured that would be way easier than something else. Anyways, there you go. Bye.